IFPA's 2020 Industry Insights, community publishing webcasts brought to you by the Board of Directors of the Independent Free Papers of America. My name is Bob Munn, and with the support of the IFPA Board of Directors, we are in our 6th year of 2020 webinars, the community publishing industry's premier webcast training series. And this morning we're going to get right to it, because today's theme is simple. We as an industry don't know our own strength. That CVC data in your briefcase is the most powerful sales tool in the history of this industry. CVC's research in your local market is a media buyer's wish list. It's the critical local information and insight that they need to be successful. That research was designed by people who buy advertising, not by people who sell it. That's the source of its power. And today, we're going to show you how to bring that to life. Tools like this are usually complex and inaccessible, but today, we're going to flatten out that learning curve. You're going to get a full explanation of your publication's audit report and what it represents from Tim Bingaman, the man whose vision made all this happen. David Crawford is going to help us see things from a media buyer's perspective, and he'll show you how the audit that you receive as a member benefit of IFPA can help give you leverage with regional and national accounts. And finally, we're going to show you how to take this onto your main street and have sales conversations unlike any you've ever had in the past. While we're shifting control of the screen to Tim, I have a question for David. Now, you know I get excited sometimes, and I have to watch the hyperbole, but I'm asking you, as the guy who once made the advertising buys for Home Depot and someone who's on a first-name basis with more people who purchase advertising than anyone I know, I need you to set me straight. I just described the data from a CVC report as a media buyer's ultimate wish list. In your view, is that an overstatement?
The information that's contained that I think we'll see as Tim goes through this really begins to answer two fundamental questions. And I'll say, speaking as a former media buyer, those that are on the call that may have heard me speak in the past, I've been with SRDS for close to 10 years, but prior to that I was an ad buyer. And what I love about the CVC audit, one of the many things I love about the audit, is that it does answer two fundamental questions up front. One is the verification of the distribution. So that's what you're seeing there on screen currently with the numbers as Tim goes through the audit. The other piece is learning more about the audience. Those two are critical and from a buyer's perspective to be able to defend the buy. That's what it's all about. Being able to defend the buy, the recommendation, whatever you want to call it, that's where it is. And I also appreciate the fact that this information and the changes that we've all seen over time, we see information like this and in conventions and things like that, but then also working with his advisory board. Those of you that may not be aware, he has a virtual justice league of industry heavyweights. A couple of my mentors are on that board currently, and they are helping guide by providing him with real life examples of what they're looking for and their ever-changing needs. So Bob, I think you're spot on.
Thank you, David. I don't often hear that. That's great. Okay, it looks like all systems are go in St. Louis. If you follow this industry and its history, you know that free community publishing grew up when it made the commitment to third-party payer circulation audits. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit later about the Wild West atmosphere that existed in this industry before we earned the credibility that comes with the Circulation Verification Council shield. But for now, IFPA's 2020 webinars are proud to welcome the return of the founder and CEO of the Circulation Verification Council, Tim Bingaman.
good morning again, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to join us. What we're going to do from the CVC side of today's presentation is kind of give you an abbreviated version of what we talk about when we do individual publisher training sessions. As most of you know, when you have a CVC audit performed, the audit report is delivered to you as a PDF, and also you can get printed copies. But what you really need to do is once that audit is delivered to you, make sure you put it to good use. Put it to use locally, regionally, and with ad agencies, and then of course nationally, to make sure that people know your story. And oftentimes when we do individual audit trainings, we're sitting down with a publisher and their sales staff or all of their staff around a conference call. It simply takes 30 to 45 minutes depending on questions, and we review in detail your market. Now today we're going to be talking about kind of the industry in general, and as you can see up on the screen, I'm using Sun Community News and Printing's audit report, formerly called Denton Publications, out of Elizabethtown, New York. But really I could be using any audit report from any IFPA member and pretty much tell the same story. And that's something about your industry that we learned early on. These group audits started back in 1999 with MFCP's first audit, and then have continued through 2016, and there's an awful lot of data out there. Now there's also some important changes, and there's some things that you can get at absolutely no cost. All of CVC's programs and all of our features and benefits are available to all IFPA members at no cost as a part of your IFPA membership. And so what I want to do today is spend just a little bit of time walking through the audit report and then all of the new programs that are available to you, some of which have been around for a few years but not enough people are taking advantage of, so we want to make sure you know about them. Now let's begin first by looking at an audit report. Now, during the training today, I'm going to be making references to national averages, and those national averages are made up of all of the publications audited by CVC. There's currently 3,660 editions in the audit system, and so it really contains a large, diverse type of print publications, whether you're a community newspaper, or a shopper, a niche publication, or a magazine. There's all shapes, sizes, and types within the system. But the important thing is it allows us to establish national averages. We learned early on that you have a very effective industry, you're very popular locally within your markets, but over time we've been able to answer a lot of questions that I think media buyers had about your industry, and we'll talk about those today. Now you'll see in this particular report, the top of every CVC audit report contains the audit period. In this particular case, the New York Association has annual audit periods, and so this report covers October 1st, 2014 through September 30th, 2015. So for those of you in New York, or for those of you in the Southeast that belong to the SAPA Association, you probably have annual reports. Some of you may have 24-month audit reports. Both are normal and accepted by media buyers. But always keep in mind, you can always go to the CVC website and see your most current reporting. And media buyers on a weekly basis see your most current reporting. So that's why it's so important that you report to CVC every 90 days. Now let's talk a little bit about these audit reports. They've changed in the last couple of years. Section number 1 is now called Audited Media Platforms and includes not only your print publication, but can include website, digital editions, social media. We'll talk about those in more detail down as we get into paragraph 6. But some of the important changes that are in a CVC audit report came at the request of our media board that David mentioned earlier. They need the ability to see your publications, and the new CVC audit reports allow them to do that. When you receive your audit proofs now, it contains a lot of red type telling you that we need JPEGs of your publications and so on. And this is why it's so important. If I'm a media buyer and I'm considering this publication, I simply touch this JPEG and it opens a complete library of these publications. And so the Adirondack Sun Journal and the News Enterprise, if I'm a media buyer and I'm considering this particular publication, I can go to my boss, I can go to my client, I can actually flip through the publication with them. That's why this particular information is so important, and that's why having this at your fingertips as a media buyer is so important, because being able to look at a publication and actually read it online having to wait for one to arrive in the mail, allows media buyers to be able to see what your publications look like. Now, in this particular publications instance, this connects to their digital editions, this connects to their websites, and then they also have all types of special editions that they highlighted within their audit report. If we were to click on this button right here, it would actually open their football annual section that they put out. So there's a variety of things that connect within your audit report now through these JPEGs that are important to media buyers. Now, sections number 2, 3, and 4 on your publication audit report are really nothing more than a who, what, where, when, why, how about your publication. Your publication's information, the rate card mechanical data, basic contact information, and so on down through the audit report. But something that is very important to note in this particular section is your audit funded by reference. All of the state and regional associations and the National Association IFPA share in the cost of audit reports across the country. That's one more step of removal between you and your audit company when you have a third-party funding source. CVC is paid in full in advance for the audits that they perform. So anytime you have that one more step of removal, it's just one more step of your audit company not having a vested interest in the outcome of your reports. And the reason these associations fund these reports is because they generate a lot of money in classified and retail display and insert programs that are divided among the membership either in the form of member benefits or rebate checks. And so you have these third parties paying to make sure that you're doing what you say you're doing. Now let's go ahead and page ahead down to paragraph 5 of an audit report. Paragraph 5 of an audit report has expanded in the last few years. A lot of these additional listings that you see here, waiting rooms, hotels, events, education copies, these are all things that media buyers told us that they want expanded in audit reports, and so they can know your distribution in a little more detail. I encourage you to go ahead and use some of those expanded sections on the new quarterly reports that were sent to you in January of 2016. So you can let media buyers know what you're doing in a little more detail. Now, the standard CVC numbers that come out of your audit report are contained right here in what's called the audit period summary. These are the 3 numbers that media buyers look for in order to be able to evaluate your publication. Your average net press run, in the case of this publication, 50,243, is the average number of good copies that rolled off the press during the course of the audit cycle. So this doesn't include press waste or startup copies. This is just the average number of good copies that rolled off the press. Now, every publication has an allowance for office, file, tear sheet, and library copies. In this particular publication's case, it's 150. So when we deduct 150 from the average net press run, we have average gross distribution, or the number of copies that could potentially go out into the field. Now, each week as this publisher is out distributing new publications, they're picking up the old, unclaimed publications. In this particular case, 76 copies were returned on average each week. So when that's deducted from your gross press run, you're left with your average net circulation, 50,017. Really think of these 3 numbers as almost a funnel-like presentation. The top of the funnel, the net press run, the largest number. Deduct your office and file copies, you're at the middle of the funnel, your average gross distribution. Deduct your returns, you're at the bottom of the funnel, the most important number, your average net circulation. Now, something about this audit period summary is to understand it, you have to go down into this detail section and look at these numbers just a little bit differently. Now, there's 3 types of distribution that no matter how complicated a publication's distribution system is, everything can be classified into one of 3 categories. Paragraph C, control distribution, is free or unpaid distribution. Paragraph 5, letter D, paid distribution, is where money exchanges hands between the reader and the publisher. And then finally, paragraph 5, letter E, sponsored or voluntary paid distribution, is where a third party may sponsor copies to a certain geographic or demographic class. So these 3 forms of distribution and all the subcategories of distribution that you see underneath are what roll in to create those numbers of net press run, gross distribution, and net circulation. Now, I'm going to spend just another moment here on the audit report. This is simply an explanatory for the print section. What I really want to do is get down into the readership study of your audit report. Now, paragraph 6 of the CVC audit is what we refer to as the technology reporting section. You'll see here that this particular publisher reported on their website reporting, and they did so for all 6 of their editions. And so when we look at this publication, a media buyer sees these 7 types of reporting for all of the website activity for this particular publisher. Now, what's important to note here is many of you will not report your website because you don't think your numbers are strong enough. Well, I would encourage you, no matter what your numbers are, to report those numbers. The industry needs those numbers, number one, because everything is +1. A lot of measurements now by media buyers are going into total audience measurement, where we take a combination of all of your numbers to see what your total audience may be, and oftentimes those are duplicated numbers. One person may read your print publication, go to your website, and follow you on social media, and that's okay. We have the ability to separate those numbers out. But this is something that's very important for your industry. I would encourage all of you to begin reporting on your website immediately on your quarterly reports. Now, let's talk about a national average. If you want to know whether your publication's doing well or not, look at your net circulation for your print publication. Generally, across the country, the national average for website unique visitors is about 25% of a publication's net print circulation. So if you publish 10,000 copies a week, and that's your net circulation, we would expect your monthly unique visitors to your website to be approximately 2,500 for an average performing publication. So your numbers may not be as bad as you think, and even if you're rolling below that national average, I encourage you to put those numbers in place. Now, normally when we go through the audit report on your individual publications, we'll spend a lot more time in this detail, but for the sake of time today, I just want to walk through the rest of paragraph 6 reporting. This is something that you can add to your reporting at any time. We also look at digital editions. We also look at text media. We also look at social media. Email newsletters are very, very popular among media buyers right now. I would encourage you to begin reporting that. We also can report your video, podcast, media, and blogs. So make sure that anything you're doing in your publication, that those are being reported. Now, paragraph 7 on your audit report, you'll see here this is broken out for each one of Dan's editions. Paragraph 7 is your average print circulation history. This is an important section for free publications in IFPA because your publications have very stable circulation numbers. You know, we hear so much these days about young people not reading print, which we'll talk about in just a little while, and about, you know, declining circulation numbers and, you know, the whole bad news we hear about the industry far too often. Well, most of that bad news is coming from large metropolitan daily newspapers and large consumer magazines. The fact is the community paper industry has enjoyed years of stable and even growing circulation numbers. And so look at your CVC audit report. Everything's broken out here by calendar quarter. Q1 is January through March, Q2 is April through June, and so on down through the calendar quarters of the year. And look at your circulation stability or look at your circulation growth. Whenever you're talking to someone who buys a lot of print, whether it's locally, regionally, or nationally, make sure you differentiate yourself from the bad news they're hearing about print. The vast majority of you in IFPA have stable and even growing circulation numbers. You've got a good story to tell. And if you happen to be one of those publications that has decreases, oftentimes it's not the same impact on a free publication as it is a paid publication. When a paid publication loses circulation, it's typically throughout their entire market area, even their core market. When a free publication loses circulation, it's typically from a fringe area. Maybe you've stopped delivering a certain zip code or a certain market area that you weren't getting the support out of that you needed. So if you show losses on paragraph 7, typically with a free publication in IFPA, it's easily explained. Now, distribution by zip code and distribution by county have always been an important part of your reports. And when I'm done here in just a few minutes, David Crawford from SRDS is going to be able to walk you through why that's so important. You know, whether they search for you by zip code, by county, by CBSA, MSA, or DMA, and those are just acronyms for larger and larger geographic areas, no matter how they search for you, that information is contained within your CVC audit report. Now, last but not least on the audit report, before we jump into the more important information within the readership study, let's talk about paragraph 10. The audit report we're looking at today happens to be a home delivered or mailed publication. Many of you are what's called controlled bulk or demand distribution. But in this particular case, with a free publication, whenever it's mailed or carrier home delivered, it's important that we look at these two scores, your receivership score and your readership score contained within the audit reports. Your readership, to understand these particular scores, you have to understand a little bit about how your audit report's done. There's somebody there at your office who spends an awful lot of time filling out CVC reports, quarterly reports and zip code reports and county reports and member questionnaires, then pulling together all types of support documents that prove that you're doing what you say you're doing for CVC auditor. But there's one thing a publisher can't control during the audit, and that's what the market has to say about their publication. CVC places random digit dials to both cell phone exchanges and residential landlines within a market, verifying, number one, do enough individuals tell us they received the publication on a regular basis to substantiate your distribution claims, but number two, what percentage of those papers are read? In this particular case, this publication's receivership score is 98.9%. So 688 of the 697 individuals in the market told us they received the publication on a regular basis. National average is 97.1%. Further, of the 688 households that told us they received the publication, 546, or 79.4%, told us they read the publication. Now, there are scores that are as low as 50%, and there are scores that are in the mid-80s. And, you know, where your publication falls in that has a lot to do with your market. So if your particular score is lower than this, it's not necessarily a bad thing. Folks, keep in mind the average daily newspaper now has less than 30 to 35% market penetration. In this particular publication's case, they can jump in their car today and drive down any street in any market that they serve, and on average, 7 or 8 households out of 10 on each and every street are reading this publication on a regular basis. Even if you're at 50% readership, half of the households in that market are still reading your publication. So your readership is typically much, much higher than the daily newspaper within a market, even if that daily newspaper has a strong TMC product. Now, we're going to skip through the rest of the items on the CVC audit report, with the exception of this. This is all new reporting that's available to you, special section and special edition reporting, and also events hosted. Our media buyer board asked us to add those onto your reports. Every single PDF or every single audit proof that goes out of CVC allows you to add this information at the time of your audit proof, and I would encourage all of you to do so. Now, the readership study, this page that begins with this long paragraph of 8-point type. This is the information that I want all of you to really pay particular attention to. You know, when we train your sales reps, we tell them, you know, never take this out and show it to the media buyers in detail. But make sure you're familiar enough with this data that you're able to use it and talk about the 1 or 2 or 3 things that are truly important to that media buyer, whether it's a local advertiser, an ad agency, or a national. And the way you do that is begin to talk about your audience, about why your readers are their potential customers. When you do that, you differentiate yourself from everyone within the market. Now, there's big scores on here that we deal with on a regular basis. The first question we ask is, do you frequently purchase products and services from ads seen in the publication? In this particular case, 82.2% said yes. National average hovers right around 75%. Once again, there's scores as low as 40%, there's scores as high as 80% plus. Where your score falls depends a lot about your local market and what type of advertising you have within your publication. Typically, publications with manufacturers' coupons, grocery store inserts, a strong product and service directory, and a strong classified section or count outperform those who don't have those things. So keep in mind, even if you have a lower score than this, the fact that the majority of your readers are reporting they frequently purchase products and services from the ads that they see is often an indicator of not only the popularity of your publication, but how it's used by your readers. Now, typically, this national average hovers about 75%. You know, we always tell publishers to look at this score because oftentimes, you know, we all run across those advertisers who place an ad or a series of ads and they're just not happy with the results. When that happens in most IFPA publications, the problem is almost certainly with the ad or with the offer. We know the problem is not with the publication or the readers, because the vast majority of readers do tell us they purchase products and services from the ads that they see. And folks, it's much easier to fix a poorly designed ad or a terrible offer from an advertiser than it is to try and fix the other two. Now, question number 3 on each CVC study deals in the retention of the publication. This is important, obviously, because the longer the publication stays in the home, the more likely a reader is to answer an ad later in the edition cycle, a more measured response throughout the edition cycle. This is an area where we've seen significant decreases. In the last decade, this number of 5 to 6 days in 1 week or more, and we used to tell publishers to shoot for a goal of 30%, which you see this publication is still achieving. This number has fallen 10%. So when you see this number on your particular report, most publications are going to be well below that 30% mark. Now, there's a variety of things influencing this score. The ability to go online and readily get the information, whether it's through your website or your digital editions. Recycling days that are new to communities certainly play into this score a bit. That's why it's so important that you have great interaction with your readers through more than just print. Make sure all of your information's on your website. Make sure you have a strong digital edition. So 3 to 4 days into that edition cycle, they do not have to go somewhere else besides you to get that information. They can go directly online. So this is an area where we see some losses, but the good news is all other scores are remaining the same. Now, we also measure reader demographics on a CVC report: gender, income, age, and education levels. And these are structured a little bit differently. Your reader demographics are on the left. That comes directly from the number of reader interviews. The market demographics on the right are the demographics for the entire population of the market that you serve. Now, most IFPA members have pretty good gender balance, either slightly more male or slightly more female. You know, generally we say it's a little better to be slightly more female. Females make over 85% of purchase decisions within households. And so if you're going to be high on any one gender demographic, that's probably the place you want to be. But the important thing is most IFPA members are mirroring the marketplace. That's particularly true as we get down here into the age groups. Once again, reader demographics on the left, market demographics on the right. Now, we hear so much these days about young people not reading print. You know, they're going to more and more digital technologies. You know, they're not going to pick up the reader habit. Well, that may be true. You know, the vast majority of young people probably won't pay to subscribe to a Metro daily newspaper. They probably won't pay to subscribe to a national consumer magazine. But the facts show, since 1992, we've been measuring this score, and it remains unchanged today. Those 18 to 24-year-olds have never read anything, and they probably never will. But what makes your IFPA member papers different is your community papers. Whether you're a community newspaper, whether you're a shopper, whether you're a niche publication, the fact remains young people begin to read community papers as they become involved in their communities. As they get married, as they buy homes, as they have children, all those things draw them into their communities and draw them into reading community newspapers. Now, CVC keeps a library of all of your prior audit reports, and so if you'd like back copies of those reports sent so you can see how your numbers are trending, just call CVC or send me an email and we'll take care of it. But the important thing here is this 25 to 64-year-old category. In the case of this publication, it represents 77% of their overall readership. Folks, these 25 to 64-year-olds are making the vast majority of consumer purchases within a community. It also happens to be an area of strength for this particular publication. You know, when we look at that number and compare it to the overall marketplace, only 70% of the market is 25 to 64, but 77% of the market is that reader, or 77% is that reader number. So they have a loss in readership in the very young households and a slight loss in readership in the more aged households. Now, when we get down here into incomes, you know, remember the story for this particular publication is 7 or 8 out of 10 homes on average are reading their publication. So who are those 2 that are not? Well, they typically tend to be the very young and the more aged households, and they typically less affluent households, which makes sense because the less affluent households tend to be the very young or the more aged within a community. The strength of your industry is in the affluence of your readers. Not only are they in the age-appropriate buyings, 25 to 64, but they're also affluent enough to buy those goods and services that are advertised. In the case of this publication right here, 65% of the readership has a household income of over $50,000 a year. 53% of the market does. And so once again, the very young, the more aged, and the less affluent households tend to be the 2 out of 10 on a particular street who are not reading the publication. Education levels are presented in the same format in this particular publication and across IFPA, really nationwide. We see that you're mirroring the marketplace. 25 to 64 tends to be the predominant readership. It also tends to be the most educated demographic. Now, back when we used to begin trainings, and if you haven't done an individual audit training in a couple of years, you're really missing out on some neat new stuff, because question number 8 now contains over 35 product and service categories. These categories measure almost every conceivable retail and consumer goods that are purchased. And it doesn't mean a whole lot to walk through the door of a carpet and flooring store and talk about the 13% of your reader households who are going to purchase carpet and flooring. Now, we used to walk through with your sales reps these formulas, 50,117 circulation times 0.989 receivership times 0.794 readership means that there's 39,277 copies read on any given week of the 50,117 that are sent out the door. So this 39,277 would be a household purchase number. Individual purchase numbers, simply that household purchase number times 1.8 readers per copy. You'll see that at the front page of a CVC readership study. Every publication is assigned a reader per copy number, which means that there's 70,699 individuals looking at those 39,277 copies in this particular publication's instance. Now, the CVC Sales Handbook, which is available to all of you, and Bob, I think you're going to look at that in a little while too. The CVC Sales Handbook spells out all these purchases, but we don't want you to have to go through these formulas like you used to. Once you do a 30-minute CVC sales training call, we'll supply you with the CVC Sales Worksheet template. We do the math for you essentially now. We ask you to send us your full page rate, your half page rate, and your quarter page rate for an annual contract. And then we list all of your responses here. In this particular publication's case, 18% of their readers reported they were going to purchase carpet and flooring. It's a household purchase, and their household purchase number was 16,241. So 16,241 times 18% means that readers of this publication are going to buy carpet and flooring 2,923 times over the course of a 12-month period of time. Now, the average carpet and flooring purchase is $1,899, and we supply you with all these national numbers. However, I want you to use your advertiser's own local numbers to make sure that they take ownership of that data. But using the national numbers, readers of this publication are going to spend, and by the way, this is an average scoring 20,000 circulation publication. Readers are going to spend $5,551,499 on carpet and flooring over a 12-month period of time. Folks, we just looked at one retail and service category out of over 35, and we're already controlling $5.5 million in spending. And keep in mind, almost 80% of this publication's readers report they frequently purchase products and services from the ads that they see. So the only question for the manager of this carpet and flooring store is how much of that $5.5 million do they want to try and influence to walk through their door as opposed to their competitors' doors? Because the only way they're not going to begin getting larger shares of that revenue is by not advertising. But in addition to that, this spreadsheet also tells them how many people have to walk through their door and buy carpet and flooring over a 12-month period of time in order for them to be able to break even on their gross ad investment. Only 29 people a year have to buy carpet and flooring for this advertiser to break even on their gross ad investment if they buy a full page. Only 15 people a year on a half page, and only 7 people a year if they buy a quarter page ad in every single issue all year long. Now, up here in the case of a car dealer, The average purchase price is $25,777. Well, let's say an advertiser wants to see the net number, maybe the average profit. $2,500 out of a $25,000 car is an average profit. We change that, and then it shows the automobile dealer exactly how many people have to buy a car over the course of a year's time. And because we've changed this number right here to a net, after the 22nd car sold in a year's time, every single car that's sold by that advertiser is 100% profit into their pocket. On a half page, only 11 cars. On a quarter page, only 5.5 cars. So folks, this spreadsheet really details it out for you on what your readers are going to purchase. And look at this total down here below. An average scoring 20,000 circulation publication controls $429 million in consumer spending. So this really brings home to you and your reps the ability to control that spending within a market that you have. Most reps don't realize how much spending they control. Now, we only do this spreadsheet for you after you've been through conference call training, because there's nothing more dangerous than a rep who goes out with just this sheet who hasn't been properly trained. Now, in addition to that, we'll also help you build what's called circulation comparisons. And just to wrap up here today, this is one that was just done, literally completed last week by Ken, the publisher of the Seymour Buyer's Guide. This is important because what it does is it shows his circulation household coverage compared to his competitors. Anytime this number is below 40% in their competitors, this is the Appleton Post-Crescent, this is the Green Bay Press-Gazette, the household coverage in this particular zip code is only 29%, 6.4%, 14.4%, 33.7%. Anytime this number is lower than 40, it presents a tremendous opportunity for you, because advertisers are typically looking for 44% market penetration in the insert game. Gets a little higher typically on drugstore chains. They typically look for 60%. But anytime these numbers are below, it presents a tremendous opportunity for you. And once you do CVC sales training, we also show you how to use this particular circulation comparison and build one for yourself. It's important that you do this because many national media buyers need this information in order for their eyes to be open on what's going on within a local market. And you certainly help them by supplying them with this information.
We turn now to David Crawford, who is uniquely qualified to offer a media buyer's view of all this. David represents standard rate and data via Kantar Media. There was a time, and I mentioned this before, when this industry was like the Wild West. Less than 25% of us were audited, and as a whole, free papers did not have the credibility that would inspire a sophisticated media buyer to take us seriously. Now today, that Wild West is gone. Today, an IFPA member's CVC audit shield opens doors that once were closed. Thanks to CVC's audience research in your market, media buyers now know they have numbers that they can believe in, that they can defend buys, as David said before. David's here to show us how your CVC data earns you a seat at the grown-ups table with media buyers when agencies make decisions. Please welcome one of our industry's most innovative and irreverent voices, Mr. David Crawford.
Wow, thanks, Bob. I'll try to live up to that. And for those of you who know me, it'll be interesting to see if I can squeeze this into a short amount of time. But thanks again, everybody, for having us. Bob, I know you're in control of the slides, so if you wouldn't mind advancing it one for me. What I'm going to do this morning, in the interest of time, is very quickly threefold. One, give you a brief overview of SRDS, or Standard Rate and Data Service. We go by both names. We're all full of acronyms here in the industry. Give you a brief overview, who we are, what we do, give you a brief narrative in terms of the benefit that's currently happening as a result of a partnership between SRDS, CVC, Paper Chain, and how all the brands, all of your publications are represented within our online media discovery platform. And then lastly, an invitation, and I'll get to that at the very end. So who are we? We have worked to connect the buyers and sellers of media together for close to 100 years. We were founded in 1919 with the mantra of providing media information in a directory prior, or now a database form. So our users would regard us as being their directory, their yellow pages for media. That's now morphed into SRDS being their search engine, or their Google for media. And who is that audience? It's the ad buyers and planners that Tim mentioned, that Bob is talking about. Primarily, our help with regard to sharing information is done with regional, national media buyers. So when you look at some folks that are controlling a lot of preprint business, like a Novus, they subscribe to SRDS.com to learn about media options within a given market. Of our 15,000 registered users across about 1,800 unique subscribing companies, the vast majority of those buyers and planners share with us that they are regularly planning what they refer to as unfamiliar geography. So if they don't live in a market, so you've got a media buyer in New York City that's trying to make plans for Enterprise, Alabama, that is a completely different area for them. So when you have that young planner or buyer, they tend to buy the way they consume, and so it's difficult for them to get their heads around certain things, or who the players are within a given market. Tim mentioned the ways that media buyers cut geography. At its most base, there are 210 DMAs, designated market areas, throughout the U.S. And it's just a way for a media buyer to create boundaries that they're able to then go in and investigate. That's a lot of real estate for a 24-year-old planner to deal with, and there's thousands of zip codes and yeah, many counties and all that other good stuff. So they're inundated with information. We identify, we organize, we provide perspective around it. So those 150-odd thousand media profiles, and pretty much everybody on the phone either is listed or should be listed. I'll include that in my invitation. But that information is curated within our platform and has been for quite some time. So when I think of who our client is, on the buying side, those are subscribers, those that pay to access the data that we are currently curating on their behalf. The media sellers, that's pretty much everybody here that's on the phone. Any publisher, any media, any qualifying media outlet, and it's pretty darn easy to qualify for a profile within the platform. Bob, if you wouldn't mind, hit the next slide. Thank you very much. So just to give you an idea in terms of scope, so within these 210 DMAs, there's a lot of information. We have over 2,600 consumer magazines, 4,500 B2B publications, a great number of websites, as most media outlets, their legacy, so in many of our cases print or newspapers, will spawn a digital counterpart. So we organize data for a number of websites. As you can see, close to 6,000 newspapers, out-of-home media, so billboards, bus shelters, all that good stuff. So our collective competitive sets are not just the daily in the market. And I know we all, we talk about that a lot, and that is probably our most formidable competition. But there's other folks that are out there that are trying to pick the pocket of any other type of media. It doesn't matter to them where those dollars are coming from, just so it's coming to them. So in many instances, when I was a media buyer, I specialized solely in print. So if a client came to me and said they were going to pull dollars from a print budget to go into out-of-home, well, I knew enough about outdoor and billboards and all that good stuff to be dangerous. I could do enough to sell against it, well enough to keep that budget with me, because I knew that's kind of where my bread was buttered. And we don't see that with our subscribers now. Media buyers are being forced into being what I refer to as multi-platform experts. They're not just specializing in one type of media. And you may hear this brought up when talking about agencies, the idea of being media neutral or media agnostic, meaning that the buyer is given a pot of money and it's up to them not only where it goes, but in what delivery vehicle and what type of media it will go within a given market. We're organizing all of that data. So I'll stop here on this slide just for a second to say, with regard to the partnership, we forged a partnership quite a while ago with a consortium of the associations branded currently as Paper Chain to make sure that the membership within those associations. I think the criteria, and guys, please shout out if it's changed. I don't believe it has, but just in case, that a member is audited and that they are a member of one of those regional or national associations, that they are receiving preferential treatment within the database. Remember, a couple seconds ago I mentioned that our users, ad buyers and planners, say that SRDS is their search engine, their Google for media. Well, just as you'll find with search engines, there's ways that you're able to influence your positioning. And the old adage that the best place to hide evidence is on the second page of a Google search absolutely plays out in our platform as well. So when a media buyer is going to look for options, let's say in the Miami, Florida DMA, and we have a forum publication that happens, I believe, to be a member of CPF, among others. Right now, with the partnership that we have in place, that profile for forum publications is actually showing up higher in the results. And also sharing, to the entire discussion that's gone on so far today, some of that CVC data, because that's what our users are coming to SRDS to do. They're coming to learn. Not only are they coming to identify who those potential partners are, but they have to be able to, as I mentioned earlier, defend that buy. So we're able to, and through the partnership, there's a hot link to the CVC audit, to the circulation piece of it, that allows the media buyer to learn a little bit more about you. And because we're pushing that information forward, it differentiates all of the contributing members versus their daily counterparts. So in the case of the example with Miami, foreign publications will show up before the Miami Herald, or will show up before the Fort Lauderdale, yeah, the Sun Sentinel in Fort Lauderdale, two large corporately owned daily newspapers, because the partnership not only allows that lift in the results, but then providing more information than those two publications, with all due respect to two great dailies, are providing, because it is that differentiation. We find that an average subscriber session in SRDS is about 12 minutes. From log in to log out, that's what's happening. And the users need to get to information as quickly as humanly possible. So to give you an idea as to who we're talking about here, Bob, the last slide, if you don't mind for me. Thank you. The core audience of SRDS is that 24 to the 4th. I think you've heard our power user referred to as Amber or Brody, the young media buyer or planner. It's not that they lack intelligence. They lack time, they lack confidence, and they lack experience. So when I see that, if you look over toward the right there, the little crisscross over there, the 24 years old, I don't look at that as a lack of intelligence. I look at that as a lack of time, confidence, and experience. They've got a lot of money in their pocket. They've got a finite amount of time to put that plan together, and they don't have time to take the phone calls or to submit the emails. That's why they're coming to SRDS now more than ever. And they have a lot of distractions. So checking social media 24 times a day, or looking down at their phone as many times as they are. There's a lot, and other competing vendors that are looking to go after the business. How do we differentiate? And that's what we've been able to do through this partnership, where a core aspect of it has been the CVC data. I've had the pleasure over my time with SRDS and working with a number of publishers individually as well, and the root of a lot of the information that we share over and above even the corporate partnership that we have is steeped in CVC data. So I'll say my last little bit here, barring any questions, of course, I'd love to answer, is an invitation. I'm going to work with Bob to be able to make sure that everybody on the call gets my contact info. I will subsequently then send out credentials. It's an online service, so all you really need is internet access and a username and password. I'll make sure that that username and password is sent out to everybody on the call to be able to go in and check their profiles and check the markets that you're in to see what kind of a competitive landscape you're currently working within inside of our database. Further, if you'd like a little bit more of a guided tour, I'm more than happy to do that. In the interest of time, I just didn't want to go through a long-winded demo of the product. I think it works better if we show somebody their market on an individual basis. I think it resonates a little bit better there. So, no, I won't say similar to the training that Tim does. I know that is super duper important. But I'll say, as you have time, please have someone from the organization reach out to us. Not only can we take you on a quick tour of the platform, but there's insight that we can give you in terms of metrics. We have to be very mindful. Media buyers and planners get a little sideways when you start sharing a lot of information about them. But we can at least give you insight as to who's looked within the market where your profile resides. We can give you insight as to what market you're considered to be part of. Remember, all that jargon about DMAs and CBSAs and MSAs and all that good stuff. We can give you some insight there, and we can share with you a little bit of info in terms of the amount of times that a profile is called up for consideration by our users and how often they're touching it. So I think that in many instances can give a well-rounded view of how media buyers and planners are behaving within a given market. And I'll send my contact information along with it.
Does that mean go to the next slide?
No, I think that was it. I think the last slide was a thank you. So if you want to do that, cool. Bob, did I miss anything?
No, but I'll tell you, I just want to make sure no one in the audience missed something there. Basically, okay, what you got was an offer to go behind the scenes and see what all the media buyers see about you in your market. And for me, 15 minutes of time with David Crawford's worth a bunch of money anyway, but an opportunity for him to give you to see what media buyers are seeing, incredibly valuable to people in our industry. And David, I want to thank you for that.
Oh no, thank you, everybody.
Okay, I've got a couple questions here. I know this is going to look a little wacky on your screens. When we have a question, I think this is for Tim. Can we see audit and/or circulation information for other CVC audited publications other than our own?
Yes, you can. CVC has what's called a reciprocal audit agreement, and all you need to do is call or email CVC. We'll send you a form, and you can not only see audit reports for CVC audited publications, but typically for publications who are audited by any other audit firm, whether it's AAM or BPA or VAC, any of those other audit firms, we can typically get you copies of those audit reports. That's one of the benefits of being an audited publication, is being able to evaluate where you are in the marketplace compared to other publications. And yes, all you have to do is fill out a simple form, and I encourage you to list every single publication in your market. If they're not audited, typically we can get you some basic information about them and send you over that data. But yes, it's available to anyone who's audited by CVC.
Okay, I have a second question here. Do we need, and I'm not sure what time this question came in, so I'm not sure if this is addressed to David or to Tim. Do we need a login to look at our CVC audit?
You don't. Your basic CVC information can be found under the Media Buyer tab, and by doing a search on the CVC website, you should have printed copies of your audit report and a PDF sent to you as soon as your audit proof is approved. But if you actually want to see your audit report, either look at those source or call CVC and we'll get you access to the actual PDF. The login data that you see on CVC is exclusive to media buyers. You have to be an approved CVC media buyer to see that data. That's where they actually can pull up your PDFs. But if you want to see your own, you should have a copy, but if you don't, call and let me know. But all of your audit data is available online and is viewable through open source. But if you want to see the audit reports, you'll need to contact us and we'll send you another copy.
Okay, and the next question, Tim, I know is one that you were hoping to get. Are you ready? This is a batting practice fastball. How do we schedule a CVC sales training meeting with our staff?
Well, you can do it in a variety of ways, whichever is easiest for you. Dial 800-262-6392. And they'll transfer you either to myself or to Darlene Lucy, and we can set up a time. Or just simply email me at tbingaman, B-I-N-G-A-M-A-N, @cvcaudit.com. and we'll be able to set up a date and a time. And what most publishers do is just have it coincide with their weekly sales meeting. We can either do it as simple as a conference call where we walk through the audit reports with your folks looking at a printed copy, but we prefer to do webinars. The webinars are easy to launch. All you need to do is have a screen that your staff can view the data on, and we'll walk through and highlight your report. We can look at competitive reports. We'll look at your SRDS listings. We'll look at how they search for you by zip code and how you're presented within some media buyer databases. So I would encourage you to do a webinar, and yes, all you need to do is call or email, and we can get those set up for you right away. And they generally take once again, only about a half an hour to 45 minutes, so it won't be a big part of your day. And we think this training is so important that we offer unlimited free training to IFPA members. So every time you hire a new staffer, we want to be a part of that training process for that new staffer. And I don't care what job they're doing at your publication, it's important they know about you. And so we have publishers who do 20 or 30 trainings a year, and we're more than happy to do that. So we'll train your staff, and then you can have supplemental trainings as often as you'd like.
This next part is the part where we talk about taking this onto your main street and turning it into money. I occasionally catch some grief for using the term media buyers too much. Some publishers feel that their primary customers are local entrepreneurs, and the term media buyers didn't apply. In my view, if they're handing you copy and writing you a check, they're buying media, regardless what it says on their business card. I'm here to tell you that media buyers, whether it's someone who runs in David's social circle or the local grocer who writes his copy on butcher paper, all want the same thing. Media buyers look at your publication, but they buy your audience. Your customers judge you by the audience you deliver. And your ultimate product is the segment of that audience that's ready to buy what your customer is selling. You're selling readers who are ready to buy. It's really always been that way, but until recently, we didn't have the means to get our audience story across. All we had to sell was our product, and that's what we sold. Today, your CVC buying power data brings your readership to life. For the first time, we can identify and measure that audience, and we know what they want to buy. That's what makes this the most powerful sales tool in the history of this industry. Historically, we sold circulation and readership because that's the way we always did it. Back in the day, they looked for circulation numbers, the bigger the better, and figured that their customers were hiding in there somewhere, and that was good enough. Then, today, customer expectations are higher, aren't they? That's okay. But most of your customers haven't seen how good you really are. And that gets fixed today. The data from your CVC readership study is a media buyer's wish list. Media buyers live and die on the quality of the information they use to make their decisions. How do they know CVC research represents the most accurate buying data for your local market? Because 15 of the top media buying organizations in North America on the CVC advisory board say it does. Starting today, we're going to show our customers what they've really wanted all this time. An audience that's ready to buy what they're selling. That's your superpower. You deliver an audience that's ready to buy their product. Starting today, we're going to quit being so modest. We're going to start taking credit for our unique ability to help these people win. Once and for all, you're going to show them how strong you really are. I don't know how it is at your place. When our new CVC report came in, I didn't even look at the front pages and paragraphs that Tim was talking about. I went straight to the back. That's where the money was. The readership study was our publication's report card on readership, receivership, and buying power. That told the whole story of our audience. Now, our good friend Joe Mathis from Kiel, Wisconsin, took the story of his audience to the next level by filleting his audit report down into this presentation. In the center spread, he has his big three: receivership, readership, and propensity to buy on the left-hand page of the center. Those three are a rock-solid foundation for any sales presentation. Market demographics on the right-hand page. Nice, huh? And here's a listing of all the purchase intent data that Tim was talking about. That section at the bottom is all the math you need to do for purchase intention scores in a nutshell. Now, there was a time when at this point, and Tim talked about this, I'd take you through the calculations that are outlined in the CVC handbook. Yeah. No one wants to watch me grind through the arithmetic on one of these. You can find it in your CVC materials, and as Tim said, he's more than happy to go over all that with you in your individual training. Plus, when Tim does it, there's a better chance of the math being right. Today, I have something way cooler to show you, and Tim alluded to it before. The numbers you're going to see here represent an average scoring 10,000 circulation shopper. Now, obviously, your numbers are going to vary and reflect your specific market. We're going to use these numbers to set you up for a conversation with your customer unlike any you've ever had before. These are the reader survey numbers we've been looking at all along, but this time in the spreadsheet form that Tim mentioned. First time I saw this on a spreadsheet, I just thought it was a neat way for me to avoid having to do long division. But check this out. Left-hand column here represents your purchasing categories: auto dealers, lawyers, beauty shops, you name it. The next four columns do the math that we just saw in the handbook, the numbers that project the purchasing power of your audience. And that used to be where we stopped. But these next six columns that Tim alluded to take this to another level. We're going to show your prospect how to justify her investment in you. Have you called on a chiropractor lately? What did you talk about? Now, while you're thinking about that, I'm going to swap screens so you can see this happen in real time. Okay. A little too much inside baseball there. There are a lot of ways you might want to approach a chiropractor. This is we've just switched to a live spreadsheet now so that we can really make this happen. And one pretty quick way to get her attention might be to show her over 1,800 people in her market who say they'll consider chiropractic services in the coming year. In fact, there was a time when that alone might have been enough to sell it, but not anymore because customers are tougher today. Now, we're gonna isolate the chiropractor here. To bring this alive, there's one thing we need to know. How much are those customers worth? How much will they spend? Now, there are a couple of ways to get that. As Tim mentioned, the spreadsheet preloaded with the statistical national average of $500 for chiropractic. But this works even better if you go in without that number. Just delete it. Leave it blank and ask your chiropractor friend, what does your average patient spend in a year? Plug that number in. Why is that better? Because it's their number. They're contributing to the demonstration. That makes it real. That makes it credible. Mixing their numbers with our numbers makes for a much tastier result. And if they don't want to give you a number, roll right past it and saying, well, the statistical national average is around $500. Is that okay with you? Then plug the 500 back in. That way it's still kind of their number. If they want to brag and say, they get more than $500, great. Put that number in, but we'll use $500. If they want to poor mouth it and say they get less, that's okay too. But the more ownership they take of whatever number you plug into that slot, the more effective this is going to be. Because here's where the magic happens. At this point, we used to say, well, based on your $500 number, our audience represents nearly $1 million in chiropractic spending this year. Now, how much of that do you want? That's kind of cool, right? We all made some money off of that. And this is where this used to stop. But check this out, because now we can really talk money. For talking purposes, let's project that your publication's full page rate is $1,000, your half is $650, and your quarter is $400. How confident would you feel pitching a chiropractor a campaign of 52 full-page ads, one every week, $52,000 a year? Is that how you roll? Yeah, it's a lot of money. Let's do the math. Or actually, let's let the spreadsheet do the math. To justify that $52,000 annual investment, your chiropractor needs 104 of those customers, those $500 customers, the 500 that they agreed to. With me? You see where we get that number, 104 customers paying $500 a piece. That 500 that they approved to use this in this demonstration, 104 customers per year is 2 customers per week. This publication's readers have already told us over 1,800 of them are going to purchase chiropractic this year. You only have to deliver 6% of those to justify 1 full page per week for this customer. 2 new customers per week to justify 52 weeks of full page ads. If they want to go half pages, fine. They break even with 1.3 customers per week. That's 4% of your audience who already said they were going to visit a chiropractor anyway. You with me on that? Your customer breaks even on a minuscule percentage of your readers who intend to purchase chiropractic anyway. In the next year, you only have to deliver 8 of those 1,800 to justify a $34,000 annual campaign. You could do a mix of full and half pages and come up with a hybrid number around 5% to justify it, or you could go down to quarter pages. But before you do that, look at our training session on the way we talk about money. That's part of the Quick Start training program. Look at that session on the way we talk about money, because if you go too low, you may be selling yourself way short. Now, does this sound like any conversation you ever had with a customer before? This tool applies to any business category in the left-hand column of this spreadsheet. Do you see why I call it the most powerful sales tool in the history of this industry? Instead of talking about your circulation, you're introducing your prospects to people who want to buy what they're selling. You're not talking about whether your paper works or not, or the latest rumor about the demise of print. You go from being just a salesman to representing thousands of documented prospects that your customer can turn into dollars. And you're not defending column inch rates or how much it costs. You're talking about the value of the customers you can bring to the table and how surprisingly few of them it's going to take to cover their full investment. The eye-opener for your prospect is that your audience and their next customers are the same people. Is that something you can get excited about? Now, here are your action items for today. Dust off your CVC materials. You already have most of this stuff. Contact Tim at CVC. Training specific to your market is part of the program. You cannot invest an hour of your staff's time more effectively than that. And finally, get to know your readers. Then introduce them to their customers. They've been dying to meet them. David, Tim, any last words?
David, I'll let you go first.
I was going to say, I can't follow that. No, guys. Well, hang on a second. Sorry about that. No, Bob, I think you hit the nail on the head. Like I said, just I'll only add to it to make sure that the information that you have within our platform, just make sure it's up to date. That may be the first and only representation that media buyers and planners that are living, working, and playing outside of your market will have of you. So make sure that best foot is put forward, especially with all the ammunition that you have, goodness willing, to get that phone call or that email. And thanks.
Thank you, David.
Great, and everyone, just to thank you again for joining us today and sticking with us for this long period of time. Hopefully the information justified your time. And, I'd like to remind you that the benefits given to you by the state and regional associations and IFPA in the forms of these audits, about half our members don't qualify for some of these associations that fund audits, and they each have to budget $2,500 to $3,000 a year to have an audit and a study done like we've just looked at. But because of your support of the associations that you belong to, and because of the support you've given IFPA, it allows those to fund them and make them affordable for all of their members across the board. So it's a great member benefit, and we appreciate you thinking and using CVC. But the most important stuff is, just because you haven't had to make the financial investment doesn't mean it's still not important to you, and take those extra steps to make sure you're bringing in revenue with the investment that IFPA has made for you in the form of those audits and readership studies.
Thank you, Tim. Is always well said and well put. Again, the generosity of people like David Crawford and Tim Bingaman and anybody else you've heard on these 2020 sessions over the years, just incredible. And they're open to your calls and your questions at any
Absolutely.
time. That's it. You got an opportunity to train with Tim. You got an opportunity to get together with David and advance your cause in your market by knowing what media buyers are seeing. Excuse me. But in the meantime, this is Bob Munn speaking for Tim Bingaman, David Crawford, and the entire IFPA Board of Directors, saying the future doesn't start tomorrow. It begins right now, this minute, with whatever you plan to do today. There's still plenty of time today to help your customers make some money, and you are just the folks to do it. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for stopping by.